Hey everyone, happy hump day. Let's just flip around for a second and let me say hi. Nice to see you all. Thank you for joining me again today. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of series from me, sharing with you either things you can make with your kids, grandkids, or gifts you can make for them or for other family members, or like that camping fabric. Make a gift for your little camper. As promised, today we're gonna make another easy little gift or something you'll find perfectly useful for yourself. I'm gonna make you a pillowcase today in real time. So that's also, just so you know, a great stash buster. So if you have meterage in your room, you can make pillowcases. Dawn brought me some colors to choose from for top stitching after. The instructions, as you can see, they're just a quick one-pager. The most important thing, if you're going to do this out of your stash at home, this is what I work with for yardage. 0.75 for the sack and 0.30 for the cuff. And this 1 or 2 inch wide strip is kind of optional. Sometimes it's necessary to make the pillowcase pop, and sometimes it can be completely eliminated. So you'll have to decide what works for you and what will make you happy. I'm just gonna lay the fabric out the way it came off the bowl with the factory fold. I'm going to just fold the sack piece in half. Do a little pull back so you can see. And I'm going to be cutting over here. So it's okay that this side is not on the mat, but this side is on the mat. Then, like a 3-tier layer cake, I'm going to put the next layer onto the middle of the first layer. Smooth everything out nice and flat. Lining up the factory folds and just letting the selvages fall where they may. And then the top of that layer cake is the littlest piece, which in this instance is that cuff. So they're kind of different at the selvage because not all base goods are the same. And the center fabric, the cuff fabric, is, look at that, you guys, it's an ombre. I think it's going to be smashing. So over here, I've just lined everything up right on top of each other. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to line up my big rotary ruler on the inside of the white. I don't want any of this white selvage in my project. And I just know from experience that width of fabric is wide enough for a pillowcase sack. And it's a pillow. It's squishable. It doesn't matter the measurement, because all the fabric comes in somewhat differently. So just trust me that this works. I promise. So I've laid this down. I've gone perpendicular here on the fold with my ruler and straight up that way to get rid of all the googie selvage stuff. And then hopefully good sharp rotary cutter. Let's see if I got through all those layers. Then we just move all that out of the way. And now what I know for sure is all 3 pieces are the same cut. I'm going to do a couple presses. I prefer to press this one first, then sew it, but we can sew it then press it today. I'm actually going to use a serger. Just know that if you're sewing this on the machine, you're just going to sew it. When this pillowcase is done, I'm going to do a top stitch with my sewing machine on this color fabric here. So I just have to take a peek and see which of these threads that I might like, because it's going to show on both. Do I pick sort of something from the middle? Because Dawn gave me a light, dark, and a medium. Just so you know, if you're not sure what color to pick and you want it to hide, always go with the darker shade. I think I'm going to go with the light one. If you're not confident, pick something that hides better. The light one is not going to hide well. If you want it to hide well, pick a slightly darker one and let it hide. What I'm going to do first, you guys, so I'm going to start with the smallest piece, which was on top, the little splash of color. In this instance, we're going to make what's often referred to as flat piping. So I am just going to barely skim the edge here. What I'm looking at here, this mark right here is the edge of the blade, right here. So I've followed the edge of my fabric through there. So I'm not really cutting anything off with the serger. So just barely 1/4 inch seam. Now let's talk about this fabric. This one has what I call heads and feet, right? The fabric is directional. There's a definite up and a down. You want to sew the heads closed and leave the feet free. So I've rejigged this, I've folded it around wrong sides together. And so I don't forget, I'm going to sew across the heads first. Just think you want to keep your brains in, but you want to leave your feet free. The nice thing about the serger is I don't have to do anything else with this. It's stitched and the edges are finished. So what I'm going to do now, just to cut these apart, because I chained them together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the little mini border and I'm going to take these 2 pieces to the iron. We're going to take this big cuff and I'm going to take this seam and push it to the left. I'm going to take this seam, push it to the right. I'm going to put the raw edges together up here. Tough part will be picking which side is going to show. I just want to do this in real time for you because it is a simple, quick gift. And on the internet, there's a lot of demos and patterns and stuff for this. A very popular one is called the hot dog method. I don't like that method. What I always look for in instructional stuff is, how can I make it look like I took all day to make it, but didn't? And that's what I'm going to show you today. And if you like the hot dog method, carry on. I'll show you in a minute why I don't. And if you want to just Google hot dog pillowcase or the hot dog method or something. So the same here, just to offset the bulk, I'm going to take this side, push it to the left, take this side, twist it to the right, and put them on top of each other, just to minimize the bulk at the seam there. So there we go. Cuffs all ironed in half. The little flat border all ironed in half. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this little piece. There's the seam allowance. I'm going to fold this there. And I'm going to walk this over to the middle. I'm going to put a pin there. I love my pin cushion. So I'm going to put that pin, and I'm just going to, in the middle there, and I'm just going to weave it a little bit so it doesn't dislodge, as straight as I can. Then I'm going to take the middle pin. I'm going to put the middle on top of that seam allowance over there. And then I'm going to find the quarter, which is the other middle. And I'm going to put that, I did a little finger press, you can probably see the crease there. And then I'm just going to weave that pin in and out of there. You can't rely on the finger press because sometimes a wrinkle in the cloth looks like your mark. So I'm going to fold that middle out, find the quarter in the other direction, a little finger press there, and away we go. Weave that pin in so I don't dislodge it for the next step. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Grab the seam allowance, walk myself over to the middle. So I'm just going to find that halfway mark there. Put a pin in it, again with a little bit of a weave so it stays straight and doesn't dislodge as we're doing our work. Then I'll take that seam allowance and put the pin on top of that, then walk to the quarter over here, little finger press, give it a little squeeze, and then that pin, a little bit of a weave, back to this other quarter, put that pin in there, get it nice and straight, then do the little weave. That just keeps it in place for what we're doing. We could have also marked with the iron, but I think for today, it's better that I have the pins so you can really see what I'm doing. I often defer to the iron. So this one has a pretty good crease mark because I didn't take the iron to it. That was the factory fold, which is the middle. So I can put a pin in there just for consistency's sake. And the weave. And then take the middle back to the seam allowance. Find that quarter mark over here. All right, and there we've got that one marked. Okay, so now everything has the quarters marked out, and that's all I'm going to mark out. The first piece that we have to do is the little one. So this is my seam allowance over here. I'm going to take the center, not this other seam allowance on top of that seam allowance, on top of a seam allowance. I'm going to take the other side and put it on top here, just to minimize some of the bulk in this area. Then I'm going to lay that pin on top of that seam, and then I'm going to slide it out and pin weave those together. Then I'm just going to gently walk around, match these two pins, which is the quarter. I'll take both of them out and put one back in, And remember, do your best to keep it on that finger fold from earlier. Then you see I'm going to put this seam allowance on top of the factory fold, that middle from before. Just helps to minimize the bulk. It doesn't all need to be on one side. So I'll take those apart. Basically, I call it pin sewing. And this one, lay the two pins right on top of each other. Take one out, and then pin the two pieces back together. All right, so now you can see that's just pinned in the quarters. It is a bit loose in between the pins, but that'll be fine, especially since I'm going to do the first one here on the serger. We don't want too many pins. Now we have to decide on that seam allowance. Do I put the seam allowance from the cuff or the middle? And I'm going to opt on this side to put the middle. And lay the two pins on top of each other. Pop one out. Pin everything back together. Then walk your way to the quarter over here. Layer and pin. So we'll just work our way around. These serger tails will get cut off in the next pass, and we don't have to worry about them. So pop the pin out. And one more to go. For now, I'm going to talk about the serger, because A, it's handy, B, it's faster, and C, I have one. Alrighty, so let's move you back over here to Serger Watch. I'll give you the bird's eye view because I'm not going to be sewing super fast right now because I've got pins involved. I've got several layers, 5 layers to be exact, that need to be kept even. So I'm going to take my time. So I'm going to just line these all up in my fingers where I want to start here. Get them all laid in together like a fancy fabric sandwich. Then we're going to do something what's called serge on. So you kind of come in at an angle and then straighten as you go. And I will trim a wee bit through this to get rid of all the extra weird hairy bits. I'm going to give you a better view. And I usually hang on to the pin and then take them out as I get closer. Then I just keep everything nice and flat. And actually what you can't see, but I'll pull the camera back. I'm actually holding all the way here, and I'll kind of pull that. That'll be at a camera view again in just a second, but I pulled that all together. And then what I will do is I'll hold that firm but not stretchy. And then with all that stuff that I want cut off, I'll make sure it's on the other side of the cutter. Then I'm just going to widget this around till I have all of these layers nice and tight, nice and lined up. And that hot pink is easy to see. It's sticking out a little more than the others. And then what I do is I just go from pin to pin, slowly but surely, nice and careful, adjusting the layers as I go. And then to finish, so you can kind of see where I swooped on earlier. We're going to go past that a little bit so that the needle threads are on top of each other, and then we do something called the serge off. And then what happens here, let's see if you can see it, it creates a smiley face. You see where we serged on earlier? And then we overlapped for an inch or so right here, so that we now know that that's a straight seam at the needle. And then I serged off, which creates that smiley face. Now we've got that tail up where we did the corner. If you're a little worried, this is not going to tickle like in your armpits when you sew a top, so you can leave it in there dangling. But I've made a knot in the string, and I'm going to pull it down to here, and then cut off the majority of that string. But that's enough. Get rid of all this dangly. Put a knot here. That'll hold that from now till forever. So those of you who may be joining us for the first time, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to take my left thumb and I'm going to run it all the way to the end of this pillowcase, kind of like you put on socks or pantyhose. And I'm going to just run my thumb up there. So my thumb is inside here like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold back on that seam allowance, and then I'm going to fold back on this seam allowance. And what I've done is I've folded a nice tight perfect corner here, and then I'm going to poke that end out, and look how nice and square that is. That white makes it look kind of crooked, but got a good corner here. I only have one seam allowance here, so I'm still going to do the fold, which creates a firm corner. I'm going to take it off my thumb and transfer it onto my finger, pushing to the outside. But it makes for a much nicer corner, and then you don't have to do a poke with a stick. Then we're going to just head back to the iron, and I'm just going to grab it by the end and give it a snap. And voila. Some directions I've seen tell you to put that lip up towards the sack. I prefer it down to the cuff, personally. So if you were on an ironing board, you'd put it in the middle here, but I'm just going to give that a gentle little press, and it would look lovely. What I'm gonna do right now actually is I'm gonna top stitch this little edge here. What that's going to do is it's going to tack this serged line down, and it's going to just give it a little professional finish. Often I don't top stitch these. Now, if I had not used this coral color, because if you're doing this with kids, I would tell you to skip that piece entirely on their first few, because it's too many layers. It's too difficult to deal with. And then this would be here like that, and I would press this differently. I would press the cuff up, and I would top stitch on the cuff side, and then it would look a lot like the pillowcases that your mom or grandma had in her trousseau, hiding in her linen closet reserved for guests. Now, I promised you I'd tell you why I don't like the hot dog method. The hot dog method has a raw seam right to here. There we go. And if I was going to top stitch that, I prefer to iron after. I know that's a bit weird for some of you. you'd like to get it all pressed flat. And if that makes you happier, by all means. Some things matter. Some things matter a lot. Some things don't matter at all. This is one of those times where for some of you might be happier to use that free arm that you got free with your machine. I'm going to use it today because some of you will be happier with it. Then what I'm going to do is the reason I don't press is often I just will roll this back with my fingers as I sew along. I'm going to start here at the side seam. This is also a place where you could use that edge stitch foot that we talked about yesterday to keep the lip running here and move the needle over. I am going to move my needle from the center one position to the left. So one position to the left, and then the little mark that's on my foot right there, this center mark, I'm going to use it. I'm going to run right along the edge here with that, but I move my needle over one position, so it's going to stitch over here, but the mark is over here. And we're really almost talking microns, but there you go. In some things they matter. So I'm coming back to where I started. I'm going to overlap about 1/2 inch of stitches, then do a little reverse. This machine has some fancy scissors, so I'm going to use it to cut the thread. It cuts and lifts, and then, oh my gosh, I got the cutest little pillowcase to go with my cutest little quilt in my cutest little tent, so I can go backyard camping. Hopefully you remember now that pillowcases are awesome to make. They plow through a good meter of fabric, so they're a great stash buster. Want to see my top stitching? There we go. Looks quite lovely, blends in with the overall color of the project. This side is where the cuff is more dark navy. The aqua still looks lovely up there. And even with all of you looking, following my own rules, I did pretty good straight stitch. Let's sign off for today. We got 100 subscribers now on YouTube, and what I've decided is that when we hit 200, I'm going to give away a little gift. It'll be a random drawing. The first 100 who subscribed will be included, and the second 100, when we hit 200, I'm going to give away a little gift. So do me the favor and share our YouTube channel around with your friends. Get them to subscribe when I have 200 subscribers. Gonna give you guys the opportunity to win something cool. Tomorrow we're going to do Christmas cards in the hoop, and then on Friday we're going to do gift cards, Christmas cards, kind of artsy fartsy. So artsy fartsy Friday, and Thursday's digital Christmas cards. So I hope you join me for both. Remember, be kind, be calm, be safe, wear your masks, wash your hands, and be grateful we can stay home and isolate. And I'm grateful that you were here today. So I'll see you tomorrow. See you later.